That guy's gonna be some senator one day.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Jesse Hughes Show. I apologize for the fact we've been a little inconsistent lately. Things have been going crazy. One of the things, obviously, the news we've all seen, I've come on here and discussed it once, is the fact that a few weeks ago, unfortunately, we witnessed martyrdom happen live right in front of our eyes. Charlie Kirk, unfortunately, was murdered in broad daylight at Utah Valley University. We all watched that happen. But in the aftermath of that, we have seen what I believe to be a renewed sense of unity and resilience with most factions on the right. Obviously, you're always going to have some of your dissenters, some of your outside voices that don't want to play ball with everybody else. But for the most part, we've seen this renewed sense of unity and this renewed sense of purpose that has come in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination. We all witnessed the beautiful memorial service, Erica Kirk's beautiful display of Christian forgiveness, acting as a Christian, forgiving somebody in their private capacity, and also the equally as beautiful and equally appropriate display of the government, whose responsibility it is to be a dispenser of justice on this earth, God's appointed servant to dispense justice, to punish evil and be a terror to the evildoer. We saw both of those beautifully articulated at that memorial service, and since then we've seen Turning Point USA decide to continue going strong, something that I think is completely appropriate and something that we need now more than ever. We have seen renewed interest in Turning Point events. Just last night, just the other night, they were in Utah. They amassed 6,000 people in the auditorium. They went to Virginia Tech with Megyn Kelly and Governor Glenn Youngkin. Thousands of people in attendance, thousands more outside wanting to come in. We saw Michael Knowles hit the road with Turning Point. Thousands of people in attendance, thousands more wanting to come in. It has been a tremendous thing to see the movement continue to grow and continue to go into an upward trajectory. But, as with all things, not everything has been a positive experience coming out of this. We've seen time and time again, in the immediate aftermath, just minutes after it was announced that Charlie had unfortunately died, we saw leftists celebrating. We saw leftist faculty members at schools and universities celebrating. Now, many of these people have gotten fired, and rightfully so. However, we have seen pushback from those who remain across a variety of Turning Point events across the nation. For example, Chloe Cole, a prominent detransitioner, someone who unfortunately fell into the transgender ideology and started to go down the path of physically transitioning her body, she decided and found out, actually, no, this is not good for me. This is not something that's helpful for me. She was supposed to speak at a Turning Point event at Texas Christian University, TCU. Unfortunately, the university denied the event, and now they are having to hold it in a church off campus, which in my opinion, I think holding it in church is awesome. Outside of Sundays, outside of when the pastor is supposed to be speaking, churches should have more events like this. Churches should be partnering with Turning Point USA, Turning Point Faith, and hosting events like this. But that is not the point. The point here is that we are seeing, even despite the unity and even despite the fortitude of the movement, there is still pushback and resistance. Now, we should have come to expect this. This shouldn't be surprising. But it's not just at the universities. It's also at the high school level as well. Here in Virginia, a Turning Point chapter at a high school was supposed to have a Turning Point event during the lunch hour with a member of the Family Foundation of Virginia. That event ended up having to get postponed following the comments of a member of that county's school board who called the event disgusting and abhorrent, compared it to a KKK meeting, and has been making all sorts of insensitive comments in the aftermath ever since. Here to discuss that fully with us is my new friend of the program, first time coming on, Mr. Philip Hamilton. Philip, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on.
So, Philip, just briefly explain, you and I met the other night at a vigil honoring Charlie Kirk here in Lynchburg. Could you just briefly, for the audience, just give us a rundown? Who are you? What do you do? What's your background?
Well, I'm a 38-year-old businessman. I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. I run Hamilton Legal Services LLC. So what I do is I serve summons, subpoenas to residents and to businesses. I also do court research and court filings. And I know you appreciate that since you're a law student.
Oh yeah,
so, so I
been
do.
learning about the good old motions here lately.
Yes. And so I'm a certified paralegal. I have a master's in pre-law. Didn't make it to law school like you did, but I'm definitely cheering you on.
Well, hey
And
man, if you ever feel like you think that that's something you want to do, there are plenty of people. The age range at law schools would probably surprise you. There are people in my class that are in their 50s and 60s, so you could definitely make it if you still wanted to. But just moving on a little bit, so you were telling me offline about an event at a high school in your local area where this school board member started comparing it to KKK meeting. Can you flesh that out and explain what exactly is going on here?
yeah, so Turning Point USA at the Western Elmore High School is actually the second largest chapter, the high school chapter in the entire United States. Charlie Kirk was supposed to come to this chapter to speak later this month. And of course, that will never be with his assassination. And Noah Coffin, who is the chairman of this chapter, had the opportunity to meet with Charlie Kirk himself. He went to the AM Fest, and he is a dynamic speaker for a 17-year-old. I am really inspired with him and the rest of the members of the executive board of this group. I was actually with Noah Coffin and their board the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. We had an impromptu TPUSA meeting at my friend Naomi's house, and we said, what are we going to do? We're gonna host a vigil. We got to do something to honor him. And within a few days, they held a vigil at the First Free Coffee Bar. We had former Congressman Bob Good who spoke there, and we also had Rob Schilling with Rob Schilling Show, and multiple pastors and all the chapter leaders within that Turning Point USA chapter spoke. And we also had, I think, the new Charlottesville High School Turning Point USA chapter who spoke as well. And so the students have been dealing with, losing a hero of theirs. Some of them, who have gotten to meet this hero. And to add, insult to injury, they're planning this event with Victoria Cobb, who is the president of the Family Foundation. And she wanted to speak about biblical truths, the biblical case for why there's just men and why there's just women on this earth. And there's not 72 genders, there's just two genders. And the principal decided that this is too divisive of a topic for the daytime, that they would have to do this after school hours. But there's a known LGBTQ plus club on that meets at the high school, and there's no time restrictions with them. Now, Victoria Cobb was not going to take this sitting down. She worked with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. She had a 4-page demand letter that was issued, and they presented it to the school and said, well, we are going to take you to court if you do not remove this time restriction from us. So the principal, to her credit, after the legal threat, did back down and said, yes, you can have it during the daytime. You don't have to wait till after school hours. So that's good. Now, in response to that, we have Allison Spillman. She comes in and says, upset by this decision to recommence this event. Now, part of the reason why she's upset is because she also has a gender confused child. So she is supporting this delusion of, the 72 plus genders that they're pushing out. And she is equating having her speak at the Western Elmore High School to having a Ku Klux Klan meeting at the school, which is absolutely ridiculous. And as we speak, they have not set a date for this meeting because now with her ratcheting things up, there's security concerns. So once they have, the police in place or whatever else, then they're going to set the meeting probably sometime, in the next month or two. But just very unfortunate that they have to jump through all these hoops just to have a meeting on two genders.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. When that meeting does get rescheduled, I want you to send me the date because if I can make it up, I would love to make it up and witness that. But it goes to something I think that I have been talking about and I've noticed for a while. You see the left is always talking about this threat of Christian nationalism. We got Christian nationalism. It's coming. It's scary. It's gonna take us all over. And there is such a ideology as Christian nationalism that has been advocated for by figures like Stephen Wolfe. That is a separate debate and a separate conversation. Regardless of what your thoughts on it are, it is my estimation, from what I've seen, Christian nationalism, whatever you may define it as, doesn't seem like it's the threat that the left is making out as. I think that it's actually this LGBTQ nationalism that is threatening us and that is sending us into this place of insanity in our country. Like you said, this woman, this school board member, she has a confused kid. And instead of being a good parent and helping that kid through their confusion, helping that kid figure out, okay, actually, you know what? I was born into the body that I was supposed to be in for a purpose. I don't know what gender the kid is, male, female, I'm not sure, but I'm supposed to be this. Instead, you have this woman and parents all across the country who are deluded and think that, oh, well, my son thinks he's actually a girl, so I need to affirm that. Now, some of them probably do it out of fear or out of they don't understand it. But then there are definitely, I think, bad actors out there, and this woman sounds like she might be one of them, who are doing it on purpose, maybe even knowing full well that this is something that is not good for their child, but for whatever reason, whether it be they want to score diversity points or they want to make themselves look like they have some sort of moral high ground, they go along with this nonsense. That's the bigger threat to this country. And that's why an event like this with Miss Cobb, where there is male and there is female, and that's it, is not only important to have that discussion generally, it's important to have it in a high school because that's where this battleground used to be just in the colleges, used to be just in the universities. It was confined to these academic spaces. Not anymore. Now it's going out into the broader culture, and we're seeing the ramifications of that. The high school, unfortunately, is the best place to have this conversation because that's where the kids are most impressionable to this ideology, but that's where also, if you do the work, you can snatch them out of it and keep them from making horrible life-altering decisions.
Absolutely. And there was a great film that was produced a couple years ago. It's called Generation Affirmation, and also it goes by another title, No Way Back: The Reality of Gender Affirming Care. My friend Joey Bright, she's from Oakland, California. She produced it. She actually did some screenings in Virginia at the Bird Theater in Richmond, so I was able to attend that. We had some lefties who were trying to get it canceled. Fortunately, they were unsuccessful, and it went on as planned. But why this documentary is so important, because she interviewed what are called detransitioners. So these are children that were duped into this, oh, you can be whatever gender, you can do the hormones, you can get the surgery done. And then they realized, wait, I'm sterile, I can't have kids. And, oh, I'm having early onset of osteoporosis from puberty blockers I've been taking and these other, cross hormone therapies and other drugs, because you're working against your God designed body. And, Big Pharma loves this because if you buy into this delusion, then you're buying all the surgery itself costs over $100,000. And then the cross hormone therapies and all the treatments is an additional cost on top of that for however long you choose to do it. Now, these detransitioners, just like Chloe Cole, they switched back to their God-given gender. And these kids, they feel like they're shadow people. They had these folks who were cheering them on. It's like, yeah, you can change, you can change, you can change. And then when they go back, they lose those friends. And it's just a really sad story to hear. And I just couldn't imagine being sterilized. But there's a bigger picture. She goes into, the George Soros and these other big lefties who are funding these projects. There's the depopulationists who, support Planned Parenthood. They want more abortions in America. So another way of reducing the level of population is by sterilizing more children through these gender reassignment surgeries. So I think these conversations are critical, absolutely critical to have in our high schools. And it's folks like Allison Spillman who think, oh, well, we don't want the students to learn about these negative effects of puberty blockers, et cetera, et cetera. Because Victoria Kopp, she is going to bring that up. And I've been encouraging folks to come to the upcoming October 9th school board meeting in Albemarle, which is going to be at the Albemarle County School Board. And it's going to be at 6:30 p.m. And we are calling for Allison Spillman to resign. No, she's apologized. It's not enough. She removed the post. No, she's got to go. She's endangering the kids. She's violated the code of ethics with the school board. We're not going to tolerate something like this with the community. And, another thing I'll point out, too, is that she ran against Meg Scalia Bryce, who is the daughter of the late Supreme Court Justice Scalia. Oh, wow. And she lives here in Charlottesville. She works for UVA. She ran for the at-large position, so to represent the entirety of Albemarle County. But Allison Spillman and her supporters ran a really nasty campaign. Now, Meg Bryce, she just had, Meg Bryce for school board. But they would spray paint in black saying, Scalia, just so that way people know that she's related to Supreme Court Justice. Her idea was, I'm running as my own person. I'm not running on the coattails of, my famous father. She wanted to talk about, what she believed in and for the public. But, they wrote things like, Nazi and, other slander on there. And it was just very unfortunate because I was running for state Senate that same year that Meg Bryce was running as well. So when I was putting up my signs for Senate District 11, I would see some of the spray paint on hers. And, it would be justice to see her resign. So we will keep the pressure campaign going and we'll see what happens.
So I was going to ask, what is this Spillman woman? What is her background? What's her story? Like, where did this woman come from? And how long is this the first time that she's done something crazy like this? What is the deal with her? Obviously, having her and her supporters going around spray painting your opposition's signs with ridiculous slander, not a sign of good character, not a sign of somebody that I would want to be representing me in any capacity in any elected office, much less school board, affecting the educational policies that are going to affect children. So where did this woman come from? Who is she? And is this the first time that she is, other than the campaign, kind of put her foot in her mouth and done something this drastic or this crazy?
Well, we had an incident in Crozet. So we had an unfortunate shooting that occurred at the Harris Theater. And of course, I offer my condolences to the lives that were lost here in Albemarle County from that shooting. And actually, I attended the vigil to one of the victims. They had the wife spoke, father, and various other folks. But unfortunately, they turned this vigil political and say, oh, we need to contact Senator Creed Deeds and Senator Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, and we need more gun control in response. It was kind of ironic because, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I haven't really heard anything about gun control because I think they got the guy that they wanted killed. But when it comes to other people, then they want gun control. That's just a side note. Um, but Allison Spillman, she came out and she was like, "Yeah, we need more gun control." In response, I'm like, "Yeah, look at you, just looking to politicize a very unfortunate event, which is what she has done." And and she has a profile picture that says, "When hate is loud, love must be louder." And the funny
It's
thing is,
always the same cliches with these people.
they can't live by their own words. So
It's
that's
always
the
these
irony about this.
useless, empty cliches that you don't even really know what they mean. Like it sounds good on a Hallmark card, but outside of that, what are you talking about? And
Exactly.
it's always the same. I don't understand it.
Yeah. And but that's just the type of person she is. She's proudly proclaimed her transgender child on her campaign page. And personally, I think that's child abuse. You're masquerading your kid. You're like, "Oh, this is such a great thing," but that's what she's choosing to do. And there was a mother. I remember it was a Department of Education hearing. They were doing a speaking tour 2 years ago, and this mother was talking about how her daughter was given cross hormone therapy, not in high school, not even in middle school, third grade in elementary school, and she was just bragging about it during this meeting in Charlottesville. And I was just thinking, I'm like, my God, I mean, that is absolute child abuse right there. I mean, we need to get a law passed that any gender reassignment surgery or cross hormone therapy, puberty blockers needs to be banned for any kid under the age of 19. We need to put a stop to this. Period.
Yeah, that is crazy. Third grade is wow.
It's unconscionable.
I don't even have words for that. That is insane. So she posted this thing on Facebook comparing the TPUSA meeting to a Klan rally. Um, I'm assuming it gets a lot of backlash because if she deleted the post and had to come out with an apology, it must have gotten a lot of people in the community riled up. How likely do you think it is that y'all can maintain that energy and force her resignation? Is that something you foresee being a strong possibility, or are you kind of concerned about maybe with timing, with dates, things of that nature, that it might not be, it might not pan out the way that you guys want it to?
Well, we are definitely upping the momentum. Currently, we're reaching out to Winsome Sears campaign. Just as Winsome Sears spoke at the Arlington School Board meeting about that sex predator that was being allowed to use the girls' locker room, and that racist sign that was put in response of her being there. We're hoping that Winsome Sears can come to the October 9th meeting or to another meeting according to her schedule. And I think that's going to bring a lot of attention on our side. And this is certainly going to help her campaign too, because it's going to show Winsome Sears as a fighter. And if she's not able to make it, we will encourage either Jason Mieres or John Reed. But if we have someone from the top part of the ticket who can come to one of these school board meetings, that's going to be very critical for this effort.
That would
And
be
we got to
huge.
keep
That'd be
showing up.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that would be
absolutely.
huge. Um, so we're trying to get this woman removed. We're trying to find a new date for this TPUSA meeting. Um, do you obviously there will be need to be security precautions. That's unfortunately something that's just part of the world we live in now. We've crossed the Rubicon when it comes to these kind of things. We need to take precautions. We need to be careful. I mean, if you would have told me a year ago that we would be having a vigil in Lynchburg, Virginia for an infamous political figure, not don't even name the person, just a vigil for a political figure, and you need Campbell County militia to run security, I would have been a little, I would have thought you'd been a little crazy, but that's the world we live in now. So do you guys have a rough estimation maybe of when you think this event is going to take place? And do you think that the controversy around it with this Spillman character and her comments, do you think that it's going to generate even more interest in it? Maybe get some students from the school that might not have come otherwise to say, "Hey, this thing is drawing a lot of attention. This thing's getting a lot of people riled up. I need to go see what this is all about."
I certainly think it is going to draw a lot more attention from the students, which is great because I think more of them need to hear Victoria's message. And this should be students who disagree with her. They especially need to hear this message. So I am all for that. And, as you mentioned at the Charlie Kirk Memorial in Lynchburg, not only do we have the Campbell County Militia that was securing the perimeter around the Lynchburg City Stadium, we also had the SWAT team that they had snipers up on the high parts. There was a bell tower with a church nearby, and they had a sniper out there as well.
I didn't
So
realize that.
we were secured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. I did not. I knew the militia was around. I didn't realize they had snipers and bell towers and things of that nature. I mean, I already felt safe when I was there, but that really puts things into perspective.
Yes.
So, moving, kind of looking a little bit more broadly, what is your estimation? So we've seen in the wake of Charlie's death this kind of renewed sense of energy. It's obviously present here in Virginia when you've got parents who might not have even spoke out before previously now calling for a school board member to resign over her comments, and just the force of energy. We've seen it here nationally. We're seeing it all over the place. Do you think, just based off of, looking at the last few years of how things have gone on the right and with the the shifts that have happened on issues and on demographics that we've been reaching, do you think that this is something different than other instances in the past where this is a momentum we can actually carry forward long into the future? For example, last year when President Trump got shot in Butler, that was something that woke a lot of people up, carried a lot of momentum into the election. But after the election, it kind of felt like things subsided again and kind of returned to a state of normal. Are you worried at all that that's going to happen here with Charlie's death, or do you think that this is such a of such a magnitude that this is different?
You know what? Last year, when Donald Trump was shot, I mean, that was an absolutely significant event. And but I do think this assassination is different. I think it's created a revival in this nation. I've had college friends of mine who reached out to me and say, "You know what? I'm just appalled that there are people cheering on the death of someone who didn't even call for violence. He just wanted a civil debate." And and they're going to church, and they're asking, which church should I go to? And that just, it warms my heart to see that that people are compelled to to go back to church after not going since their childhood. And I've been going to so many different meetings since the assassination has occurred, and I think there is a revival going on in this nation. We see that the youth that are getting mobilized. We have a new Turning Point USA chapter at UVA here locally, which is awesome. Not only that, but we have thousands and thousands of Turning Point USA chapters emerging around the nation. Last week, I was at Virginia Tech. There was a Turning Point USA event with Megyn Kelly and Governor Glenn Youngkin. And they talked about their last conversations with Charlie Kirk, how excited he was to come to Virginia Tech and how it just wasn't meant to be. But despite the fact that Charlie Kirk wasn't there, over 3,000 people showed up, which was fantastic. So there was a long line that went several blocks at the wait in just to get in. We did have protesters, but there was only 50 of them. So we shouted USA, USA, USA just to drown them out. But with one of those protesters, they had a sign that said, "The only good Nazi is a dead Nazi." So, while we're having this revival, while we're really compelled, and things are looking good with conservatives and more people coming to Christ, we do have to be situationally aware of the crazies and the people who are calling for the deaths of those who disagree with them. So, I choose to not live in fear. Some people have said, well, I'm not going to go to the events anymore. I'm like, no, they win. If you stop going, if you let your voice be silenced, they win. We got to keep going and live without fear and be warriors. So I'm all for that.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And it brings me to another point. Um, Somebody with a sign. The only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. Well, first off, please point out who the Nazi is in a. You know, Megyn Kelly and I probably agree on like 80% of things. We probably don't see eye to eye on some other stuff. I don't think either of us are looking at each other and saying, there's a Nazi. Especially not her. Um, but we've
And she's a former
seen that.
Democrat.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
And Megyn Kelly, she's a former Democrat.
Exactly, and which is another interesting thing. You've got Trump, former Democrat, RFK, former Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, Megyn Kelly, former Democrat. But outside of that, you look at the left and the violent rhetoric that they've been using, and they've been using it for years. I mean, just the other day, the Newsom press office tweets out, "Stephen Miller is a fascist." Okay, what are you trying to achieve with this? Because when you look at the death of Charlie Kirk, the guy that killed him, what did he have written on his bullets? "Hey, fascists, catch this." Your rhetoric is not helping anything. And this is something I brought up at the vigil when I got to speak, which again, just want to thank the event organizers for allowing me that opportunity. It was truly a blessing. But one of the points I brought up was we've got to have moral clarity about what's going on. This isn't your 1950s Democratic Party anymore. It's the phrase I used is it's not two sides with the same common vision and just different routes to get there. We're dealing with diametrically opposed worldviews. The only difference is one side just wants to be left alone, and the other side wants to kill the ones that want to be left alone. Why do you think, even in the face of seeing this violent attack and the fact that conservatives are getting their lives threatened, are being killed for just standing up for saying, "Hey, let's just have a conversation"? Even in the wake of that, why are people like Newsom and prominent figures on the left still employing this rhetoric? I think they know exactly what they're doing, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Well, we have to look back at the events of the George Floyd revolution in 2020. You had, it was Andy No calls
Fiery,
trans.
but mostly peaceful.
Yes, as Don Lemon said. Yeah. And they have trans Tifa, is what Andy No likes to call them, because the majority of Antifa are gender confused individuals. But these folks are neo communists. And what they want to do is they want to foment a revolution. They want to take down our capitalistic republic. That's the end game of these folks. And I've encountered some of these Antifa members because there's a chapter right here in Charlottesville, and you can't reason with them. I asked them, like, hey, what is it you're looking for? It was like, we want the government to burn. That's what one of them told me. And I'm like, wow, there is no middle ground with folks like that. But Antifa and BLM and these folks are doing the ICE protests right now. I mean, they are really the brown shirts of the Democratic Party. So whenever Gavin Newsom or former President Biden and Kamala Harris, they issued statements, it's really to encourage and enable their enforcers to get to work, to foment violence. You look at the LA riots, they were paying over $30,000 per person that was a violent protester. So if you got arrested and you caused some property damage, some fires, and got in scuffles with police, we're going to pay you $30,000 plus dollars. So violence is certainly being encouraged, and I'm hoping that Pam Bondi and the Trump administration gets RICO charges against these folks, because the people who are funding this are criminals and they deserve to go to jail, because they are hurting innocent lives around the nation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was actually about to bring that up, the RICO element. That is something that, um, right after immediately after after Charlie's death, Stephen Miller goes on Fox. Trump goes on Fox. They both talk about RICO charges against Soros and against these organizations that are funding this. Perfect idea. Let's do it. Let's bring it on. And there have been some people on the right who, some are well intentioned and others probably not so much, who have been saying, oh, they're not doing enough in the wake of this. They're not doing enough in the wake of this. When Mar-a-Lago was raided, that was what, about a year and a half into the Biden administration? It takes time to build a case. It takes time to build a foundation to be able to justify investigations, to be able to justify charges, indictments. You have to build a case. And so I understand there's an urgency and there's a zeal, like we have to get something done. Yes, I agree. We also have to be a little bit patient. But there, you have seen steps towards that effort, like Trump's executive order marking Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Now, personally, I don't think that executive order does quite enough. I think there could have been some more to it, but there's also a place where Congress has to step in, which if we're praying for Congress to do something, we're going to be on our knees for a while, let's be honest. But there's a place for Congress to step in and add teeth to it, codify it, and put some provisions in there that will make it more legally enforceable and have harsher penalties. But that being said, what do you think is, other than, we do have to just straight up arrest some of these people, what's the best way? Like you said, you can't reason with Antifa. You can't really have a conversation with them. So how do we deal with these people? How do we have a functioning, proper country with people like this living in it? I don't know if it's possible. Like, what do we do in this situation?
Well, one way of getting to them is, they have a spiritual hole in their body, hopefully, maybe not us as conservative activists, they probably won't listen to us, but if they have friends who turn to Christ and maybe they can open their heart, I mean, that's really, if they're open to salvation in the future, that's what's going to change their heart. Otherwise, if they don't convert to Christianity, they're going to be stuck with the will of Satan and this hatred and call for revolution, because, what is communism and socialism, and neo Marxism rooted in? Atheism. Because without a belief in a higher power, you're going to think that the cause is the greatest power in your life, and it just leads in a bad direction. But one thing I want to mention is I was at an event last night. This is the book Fiery but Mostly Peaceful, and it was Julio Rosas, who's an independent reporter. He spoke at the Virginia Council Forum, but he is on the ground and he's covering the riots from the BLM riots in 2020 to the ICE riots that are going on now. So he deals with these folks face to face. And, it's important that we have independent journalists like this, because we hear things from them that we will not get from the mainstream media. And, I just pray that he's safe, because he's going to Portland, because now that we're sending the feds over there to shut down all those protests that are going on, and the attempted destruction of the ICE facility and disruption of their operations. He's going to be covering that. And but yeah, it's going to be very tough. I mean, everyone is offered salvation, but at the point when they're not saved, we have to enforce the rule of law. If they're violent, we need to arrest these folks, and hope that punishment in jail will change their mind. But unfortunately, there are going to be some that will never change. Their hearts are so darkened and they're just so rooted in the cause, they're not going to change, and that's just very unfortunate for those folks.
That is unfortunate, but that is the reality. All right. In the last few minutes we have here, just briefly, where can people find you, and what's some upcoming things that you're helping work on, or some things that you think people should have to their attention that you want to promote?
Sure. So I'm the secretary of the Albemarle County Republican Committee. So I'm very active with the local committee. we have Scott Smith, who's running for the Board of Supervisors. So we're encouraging folks to support him. It's the only contested Board of Supervisors race in Albemarle County. So he has a fundraiser event that's going on. Actually, not a fundraiser, a debate that's going on tomorrow. So it's going to be the first debate between him and his Democratic opponent. So I'm certainly rooting for him tomorrow. We have an event with Young Americans for Freedom, which is going to be at the Miller Hall on October 7th. So it'll be the 2-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks. And Colonel Allen West is going to be speaking over there. So I'm encouraging members of the public to come out to that event. I had the opportunity to meet him on Inauguration Day. They had the multicultural ball that he and Roger Stone actually spoke at. And boy, I tell you, Roger Stone definitely gave a fiery speech because he's been a victim of that lawfare. So I certainly respect the work that Roger Stone, him, and many other folks who've helped with the first Trump administration have done. And I am running for state senate in 2027. This will be my second time running for the position. It goes from Albemarle County, Nelson County, Louisa, and Amherst, so just north of Lynchburg. And we're going to be launching the campaign website probably December this year, and then open the bank account in January. But we'll be doing a kickoff soon, and we got to do everything we can to unseat Krieg Deeds because he's been in the General Assembly for over 30 years, and he's in his 70s. He's definitely the definition of the old guard, and he supports gun control measures. He had the unfortunate loss of his son, which I think he's partly responsible for, because he had a mentally ill son, and he let his son have access to that firearm, which led to his death. But he wants to push gun control on folks like you and I and other Virginians when he was irresponsible as a parent. We got to focus on how can we increase personal responsibility in the society, because the government's not the solution to everything, and that's what we Republicans believe. So I am all for individualism, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and just pray for me as I continue this journey, and hopefully I'll be successful in the next 2 years.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We definitely wish you the best. We'll be praying for you, praying for your success. Being in law school, I don't know how much I can actually do, but I will be here available in the Lynchburg area for any help you might need. But thank you so much for coming on. Stick around for a second, but thank you for coming on. We certainly appreciate it, and it's been a great conversation.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
All right. Well, all right. Well, thank you again to Philip. Um, we're living in a wild time. Truly, truly wild time. And as I have said several times over the course of the last few weeks since Charlie's death, this is a situation that's going to take all of us together to move forward. We all have our opinions on these pet issues. We all have our opinions on, should abolition be the goal for abortion, or should we stick with incrementalism? Is Israel our greatest ally, or maybe we're giving them a little too much support? Maybe we should just cut all foreign aid. Whatever issue that you're looking at, we all have our disagreements. We all have our debates, and that's fine. Let's talk. Let's talk about it. But we can't have any more brother wars. We can't have any more infighting, because we're dealing with spiritual darkness, with sick people, like he was talking about. This woman at this school board comparing a Turning Point event to a Klan rally. Turning Point is pretty much, at this point, even more so than the actual Republican Party, the mainstream of conservative politics. And it's a pretty good mainstream if you ask me, but it's the mainstream. It's not like this is the most radical option we have. And she's comparing it to a Klan rally. These are the kind of people we're dealing with. We have to stick together in this time. We can't afford the brother wars. when the real war is with those on the left who want the same thing that happened to Charlie Kirk to happen to you and to me and to our families. Like you've probably seen several times on X. The Ukrainian girl on the bus, that was your daughter. That was your sister. That was your wife. That was your mother. Charlie Kirk, that was you. That's what they want to do to you. We can't afford the infighting. We have to stick together. Thank you guys so much for watching tonight. I truly appreciate it. We will hopefully be back here next week. We'll hopefully might have another interesting guest. I'm got some things coming down the pipe. I've got some people I'm talking to. Would love to have some very interesting people on. But we certainly appreciate you guys watching tonight. God loves you, and so do I. God bless you all. Have a great night and great rest of your week. Thanks.